Hello, it is Throwback Thursday, June 1st, 2023. Steve Sipress here, throwing it back 25 years. 25 years ago, just a little bit over 25 years ago, in May 1998, was the final episode of the TV series Seinfeld, named for my second favorite comedian of all time. Of course, my favorite comedian is my client, Jeremy Dog Danley. But next to Dog, my favorite comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, who I started following when I believe I was in high school. I first saw him on some kind of young, up-and-coming HBO special or something for comedians. He was just a few years, still is, just a few years older than me, and grew up also in a town on Long Island about 15 miles away from me. A little trivia, only a few miles away also, and a few years older than that, Billy Joel. But anyway, and then I believe that when I was in college, Jerry Seinfeld got onto The Tonight Show or another one of those late night shows and kind of launched his career. And then I remember going to see him when I was really young. I was a student in Boston, and he came up and played in Boston, and pretty much nobody knew who he was. And I convinced a friend to come with me to the club to see this guy who now people have called me over the years. I actually had the head of a company that I worked with for almost a decade that called me Stevie Seinfeld because we have very similar New York style, sarcastic, observational, dry humor. Also, Jerry Seinfeld, well known to work clean, as they say in the industry. And so we have a lot in common there. And I, over the years, have been called on by many of my friends to do a Jerry Seinfeld impression, which, of course, about all I can do is to say something like, now I haven't done it in so long. What did Jerry say? Haven't seen him in a while. He would say things like, why is it that? Observational humor, right? And then I go on to say something after what is the deal? What is the deal? That's the phrase. What is the deal with these blue recycling garbage cans? When everyone knows that recycling is an incredible scam, and pretty much most of it stuff that people put in their recycling bins that's picked up just goes in the landfills anyway, and it costs more money and more trouble to recycle it as well. Now, Jerry Seinfeld would probably never do such a truthful and therefore divisive statement taking on something like that. He would just do kind of middle of the road type of humor. But anyway, so the Seinfeld show has an important lesson for business owners. Now that, by the way, one of the only few shows of all time to finish and end its run as number one in the ratings. And reportedly, they offered Seinfeld, I think he was making $1 million per episode, and they offered him $5 million an episode just to come back for one more season. The show was number one, which kind of shows you, there's a lesson there. It kind of shows you that clearly he was worth the $5 million an episode while they were only paying him one. So, of course, when you work for somebody else, you're not going to get paid what you're worth, but you're going to make them a lot of money. But Seinfeld made a lot of money, and of course makes a killing through the fact that still 25 years later and 30 years later, the show ran for like 9 or 10 years. 35 years later, those episodes are still running all over the place, and he's making tons of residual. Not to mention that he partnered to come up with the sitcom with his buddy Larry David, who also has, I think it's on HBO, Curb Your Enthusiasm, a Larry David show. The George Costanza character, loosely based on Larry David, and the Curb Your Enthusiasm character, completely based on Larry David. And that's the lesson that I want to share with you today from Seinfeld and the sequel, kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, is to be yourself, to be your authentic self. Okay, so Jerry Seinfeld playing a up-and-coming comedian living in New York. Not a big stretch. It didn't take some big acting chops. He was pretty much playing himself. And Larry David playing a curmudgeonly, complaining guy that didn't want to follow the rules of society, on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think the show might still even be going. Not a stretch either. He's playing himself. So when you are doing your advertising and marketing as a business owner, one of the keys is to be yourself. That is the best way and the easiest and the simplest way, and I'm all about the easiest, simplest way to do everything, is to gain trust, to be known and to be liked. The old KLT, as they call it, to be known, liked, and trusted by your audience. Be yourself. It's way too complex to try and act like somebody else. I could never try and remember that I said one thing one day and another thing another, or one thing to one audience and something different to another. Like politicians and others that pander to the crowd, or actors who are always played a different role and got to memorize the script and gain weight or lose weight or grow a beard or do whatever, or like playing a role. Like, what for? Like, follow what Jerry Seinfeld did. I was telling you a story about this. Going to see him. First time I went to see him in person at this club in Boston, and all I remember is there was almost nobody there, maybe 20 people in the place, and it was almost starting when we came in, and so empty, and we were like, oh look, there's a table right up in the front in the middle, let's go there. Best seat in the house. Bonus lesson I shared there for those that don't know, haven't been to a lot of comedy shows. If you might not want to sit in the primo front row center seats at a comedy show unless you enjoy becoming part of the act, because comedians are well known to get some humor, especially an observational comedian. Jerry Seinfeld, I don't remember what he said, but he made some kind of observational humor out of me sitting right there on the table right in front of him. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, I guess that's what we get for saying, oh look, front row seat at the movies, at a concert, at an opera, at a ball game. Like, great. Front row seat at a comedy show, you possibly are going to become a brunt of some jokes, part of the show, possibly not in a great way, unless you have 2-inch thick skin like a rhino, like me, and whatever, we just laughed. Anyway, so I've loved Jerry Seinfeld throughout my life, and that's the important lesson I want you to learn from. Likely you're familiar with the Seinfeld show on TV. If not, I'm sure it's all over YouTube and reruns are all over TV somewhere, but you'll watch a character, Seinfeld. Now, the show colloquially, years later, became known as the show about nothing, which I remember that came like halfway through the run of the show a few years after it started, where they came up with, they were always coming up with harebrained ideas for the episodes to kind of play themselves, like pitching the show, the Seinfeld show, basically, to a network. And so as they pitched it, I think that's where it became known as, what's the show about? Well, it's a show about nothing. And that kind of caught on, and people described the Seinfeld show. But Seinfeld, I remember describing it once. I read it somewhere, it was an interview. He said, no, the show was very much about something. It was about how comedians come up with their material, how they just go through their everyday life, and anything can become a joke, whether you're just looking for your car lost in a parking garage, or you're waiting for a table in a Chinese restaurant, or all his different neighbors and girlfriends and escapades and, all the mundane stuff, and then all the terms that Seinfeld put into the common colloquial language of the day. If you've ever used the term double dip, if you've ever used the term regifting, these came out of the Seinfeld show. If you've ever heard anyone say serenity now, or yada, 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 or my favorite and very appropriate, and I guess we'll end on this note now that we have started officially Pride Month. You veterans, you only get one day, unless you count Memorial Day. If you die, you get another day, Memorial Day. But Pride, you get a whole month. And if you're into that, and that's what you're all about, not that there's anything wrong with that. And that'll do it for Throwback Thursday, June 1st, 2023. I will catch you back here again tomorrow on Foundation Friday. Until then, over and out. Bye-bye.